looking there at protests outside the federal building in Minneapolis today. This comes 2 days after immigration agents shot Alex Preddy. Similar protests took place in Las Vegas, Iowa, and also in Chicago. Welcome to Inside the Issues. My name is Amrit Singh. Emotions are high in Minneapolis and also around the nation after this month's second deadly shooting of an American citizen by immigration officers. Today, the state and the city of Minneapolis went to court to challenge the deployment of about 3,000 of those agents. President Donald Trump said he spoke to Governor Tim Walz earlier in the day. Today, the president said on social media he had a, quote, very good call with Governor Walz. The governor's office said Walz asked for fewer agents on the streets as well as impartial investigations into both Saturday's shooting and the killing of Renee Good a few weeks ago. This sets up another fight over funding the federal government. The Senate is set to vote on a spending package this week. It includes DHS, FEMA, and other agencies. Democrats, a growing number of whom say they will not support a bill that includes funding for the Department of Homeland Security. So there's a conversation about what to do with that portion of the bill, if anything. Take a listen.
Well, I'm not giving ICE or Border Patrol another dime, given how these agencies are operating. Democrats are not going to fund that. The government will shut down if Republicans insist that that be joined with other government funding. It will be a Republican decision.
We have a bill about funding them, giving them more money. I'm not voting for that, and I didn't vote for tripling their budget over this summer.
Now, to be clear, when Senator Klobuchar there talked about tripling their budget, ICE is funded for years now with $75 billion in the One Big Beautiful Bill, but this would be an additional $10 billion that Democrats are saying they shall not pass. At the same time, a number of Republicans have blamed the deadly shootings on Democratic policies. That includes inside the White House. Take a listen to this.
This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota.
The reason there is a surge of ICE agents and Border Patrol agents in Minneapolis, in large measure, is because of the sanctuary policies that have been enacted and the refusal to allow local law enforcement to cooperate with federal immigration officials.
Customs and Border Patrol. So as Republicans blame Democrats tonight, multiple outlets reported that the Border Patrol official in charge of immigration enforcement in Minneapolis, Gregory Bovino, will leave the state. The president's border czar, Tom Homan, is taking over. President Trump has sent Homan there to Minneapolis. Let's check in on Capitol Hill with Ted Johnson, the political editor for Deadline.com, who can speak to much of this. Ted, you're there in Washington, D.C., so I know you're snowed in. Thank you so much for taking time on this very snowy night there in Washington. And I know that you've been speaking to people, maybe not in person again because of the weather, but the conversation is happening as the House is not there, but the Senate is. And this is now another shooting of a U.S. citizen by ICE in Minneapolis. How is the response to this one different with Alex Preddy as opposed to what we saw with Renee Good, if only cumulatively, or is there a difference ultimately in where this might be going?
Well, I think there are a lot of differences. The main one is that you're seeing voices on the right, people who supported Donald Trump, who have been very critical of what happened with Alex Preddy. And I think a lot of that is motivated by the video that emerged, where some of the angles are pretty horrifying to a lot of people. So you're seeing outlets like the Wall Street Journal editorial page, the New York Post, speak out on this and urge Trump to essentially back down. As well as a number of Republican lawmakers, Senator Curtis from Utah issuing a pretty strong statement today. So that is the big difference. And you didn't see that when Renee Good was shot earlier this month.
And all of this also is not coming upon Gregory Bovino, who he mentioned, who is overseeing the ICE operations, who we are hearing reports of. Bovino will be asked to leave Minneapolis and potentially also leave his post. We don't know where that goes. But a few days ago, Bovino did make what many say an unsubstantiated claim that the man who was shot and killed there by federal agents was planning to massacre law enforcement, and he told everyone not to engage in a frame-by-frame adjudication. In other words, referencing that video that many have seen, which is creating this outrage. Speak more about President Trump's response there to Bovino, the extent to which the administration might be trying to shield President Trump from some of the frontline response, and what we're hearing there about where Bovino goes.
Well, it certainly seems like the administration is trying to kind of separate the president from some of the initial reactions, initial explanations that came not just from Gregory Bavino, but came from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and even from Vice President J.D. Vance, as well as President Trump's senior advisor, um, uh, uh, senior advisor. That I think is really something that uh, got people going. Is that the initial explanations diverge so much from what we saw in the video. And I think Trump is someone who is very sensitive to public opinion, very sensitive to the visuals that come out of these. And that's why you saw this tonal shift from Trump starting on Sunday night and continuing into today, him putting messages on social media that were almost conciliatory towards Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, and Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, two people who he has constantly bashed. In fact, the press secretary, when she spoke today before the press, she was asked, why is your tone a little different from the president's? And he has just posted on this, and she kind of had to backtrack and just say, hey, this is what we had been saying about Governor Walz and Mayor Frey in the lead up to this. It's not necessarily what we believe now.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, as you say, perhaps a shift in tone from President Trump and conciliatory in nature to those elected officials, Democrats in Minnesota. White House Secretary Caroline Leavitt has gone on to say, though, that this is still Democrats' fault ultimately, perhaps because of some underlying policies or some of the ways in which the response to the ICE operations have unfolded is why these things have happened. So talk a bit more then about President Trump's call with Governor Walz, which I imagine it related to some of these things, but also talked about a potential investigation, which even Republicans like Tom Tillis, the Judiciary Committee, want an independent one at least, and we're not sure if we're necessarily going to get that.
Well, yeah, that is, things may have gone pretty well on that call today, but now we're going to get into the issue of an independent investigation and whether the state authorities would be part of that investigation. And there's no commitments from President Trump on that right now. So that is a potential big hangup because, as much as the White House says, hey, we're doing the FBI is doing an investigation, we're doing an internal investigation. The problem is they've lost all this credibility because of those initial reactions to the shooting of Alex Preddy and to a certain extent of Renee Good, where people, can watch what happened and they're quite a contrast to the idea that either one of these two victims were domestic terrorists.
So you were speaking a bit about some of the Republican response and some Republican allies historically of the president also taking some issue with what we saw there in Minneapolis. I just mentioned Tom Tillis. Can you speak any further to the ways in which people are standing and being counted inside the Republican Party around this, in full support of what we're seeing there with ICE, those who are taking some issue with the specific tactics of this incident, but otherwise supporting the mission, those who are calling for investigation, or those who are really taking issue with the larger project?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're seeing very few Republicans say, hey, I am, I want to defund ICE or I have an issue with the entire project. It's more on the level of we want to have committee hearings on this, which is greater than a lot of the Republicans have reacted so far during Trump's second term, that level of oversight. So we may see that in the coming weeks and in the coming months. That is a different thing, and it says that they are sensitive to where public opinion is going on this.
Ted, as you're talking about that and this idea about defunding ICE, I mean, let's take it to the level of the government funding bill that is discussed there in D.C. Potential partial government shutdown going to be in place come Saturday because this is a conversation about this package of funding bills, which includes DHS funding. And Democrats said we don't want to give any more money to ICE, even though ICE is largely funded from the One Big Beautiful Bill. This is about additional $10 billion. So this could hold everything up. Republicans don't want to cleave it off. Chuck Schumer saying you got to cleave it off. What might happen here?
Well, it is going to be a pretty dicey situation for both parties as the week goes on. Democrats are under a lot of pressure from the grassroots and from some of the Never Trumpers to take a really bold stand and not back down on this situation with ICE. There's a lot of anger, not just in Minneapolis, but nationwide over the images that people saw. And there is still this kind of notion that Democrats ultimately will back down. And I think that would be a big disappointment for the rank and file in the party if that were to happen again. Today, you saw some Republicans kind of talking through different scenarios to solve this. You didn't see this kind of, immediate standing, saying we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. So there might be some give and take as the week goes on, but it also might take President Trump stepping in and making some kind of concessions, some kind of a compromise that can push this funding bill through.
And Republicans have said it needs to be coming from the White House because they almost feel they're not empowered to do this. And Democrats on every level of government, including in the Assembly here in California, are looking at Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying this is not a time to back down. It will be another Democrat litmus test. It'll be another conversation about funding, potentially a partial shutdown. And Ted, thank you so much for taking time for talking about it. I hope it thaws out there enough for you to do what you need to do in the next few days, which includes continuing this.
Fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. For you and everyone there. Thank you so much, Ted. Really appreciate you being on tonight. Ted Johnson, Senior Political Editor there at Deadline.com.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage. And click the subscribe button here. You can also download our app and watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.